Is it paranoid to think filmmakers are literally trying to f with us with the length of these logos at this point? It's almost as if, wait, what was that noise?
Nah, I just think it's the filmmakers letting you know who made the film. You know, because morons such as yourself keep referring to these films as Marvel movies.
Born with extraordinary abilities.
Narration.
Hypocrisy.
And like most X-Men movies, this narration is rehashed, overly pompous, poetic meandering about genetic mutation.
False. The narration is of Charles explaining the dangers of one having too much power. For once, he's not talking specifically about genetic mutation.
Give someone wings and they may fly too close to the sun.
In the X-Men story, while someone might get wings, they still have to obey the laws of physics and are unable to fly too close to the sun like Icarus did. Allegory be damned.
So you recognize that it's an allegory and are still sinning it for not being physically possible?
Why do you make these videos, Birdman? They're only jokes.
These mutants also have the ability to rewrite history, since the Egyptian pyramids weren't even started until 1,000 years after this.
Okay, but this is obviously not real life, number one. And number two, they showed Apocalypse building this pyramid in the end credits of Days of Future Past, so this obviously isn't the one built by Khufu.
While we watch the power of the sun infuse this pyramid with solar power through something that looks like an ancient, oversized microchip that melts gold and raises the platforms, I realize it's probably best that I not try and figure out how this whole process is bull.
But you could at least attempt to explain why you believe this process is bullshit. Speaking of why, your subtitles aren't matching what you say, and the why here changes the meaning of the sin significantly. Only I can put subs that don't match what I say.
This block takes out many other support beams that are roughly the same size, and not only never slows down, but actually gains speed.
What? First of all, these beams and blocks are not the same size, even roughly. Second, if you'd shown the damn scene, your audience not only would be able to see that these blocks are significantly larger than the beams, but also why the blocks pick up speed. Because, you know, gravity.
Here's the animated title sequence, and oh look, Mona Lisa! Huh.
Jeremy points things out on the screen cliche.
Also, we interrupt this awkward segue from ancient Egypt to the 1980s to show you a sculpture of Jesus carrying a cross through a tunnel by candlelight.
Refer to the previous sin.
This is just someplace in Ohio. No need for specifics, just Ohioing it up in here.
Yeah, because if they'd put Dayton, Ohio, you'd have gone all, in case you confuse it with Dayton, the Japanese word for good morning. I mean, he's literally complaining about something not being there, that if it were, he'd complain about it being there.
Well, at least they aren't sexualizing Mystique in this movie.
So what if they were? What's so bad about sexualizing a character that, in character, uses her sexuality to her advantage? Not to mention, sexuality is a huge part of Mystique's characterization in the films and comics. This is like sinning a prostitute for wearing stockings and garter belts. That's the fucking point.
Also, this is 10 years later, right? Shouldn't she be close to turning into Rebecca Romaine by now?
No, as was mentioned by Beast in First Class, Mystique ages slower than normal humans. Not only that, she is literally a goddamn shapeshifter. She's already shown the ability to age or de-age herself.
In case you confused it for Pruskow, Kentucky.
So here's where you see why I sinned Jeremy earlier for the Ohio thing. This running gag is meant to illustrate that movies tend to give us the city and country of relatively famous places, so it's unnecessary. The problem here is that who the f*** knows what or where a Pruskow is besides people that live there?
I've had just about enough of these glamour shots of this sign, thank you very much.
In the long list of things that prove CinemaSins aren't actual fans of cinema, Jeremy hates establishing shots.
Let us now start fresh, without remembrance.
Ah, T.H. White. Yet again, Professor X is caught quoting classic literature instead of teaching these kids about how to fight evil. But whatever, I guess poetry matters somehow. I mean, that is what the characters are going to think at the end of this movie after a global war with Apocalypse, no? What good is a school for mutants that just teaches them regular AP creative writing?
Hey, Jeremy. This is a school.
No, you don't know what it's like to be afraid to shut your eyes, to be trapped inside your own head.
Jean says this to literally the only person in the world who does know exactly what this is like.
No, Jean is very clearly referring to the nightmare she has due to the Phoenix Force, genius.
Charles locates his ex-girlfriend halfway around the world, but somehow misses the most powerful mutant the world has ever known that is literally steps away from her.
Cerebro has the ability to switch between searching for humans and mutants. You notice how currently it's focused on a human? Yeah.
Recently awoken all-powerful god wastes his first few hours wandering through an Egyptian farmer's market. Because he's so shocked at the advancement of society in his absence, he's unable to even remember this world domination plan, I guess.
This man has been asleep for 5,600 years. He's essentially living on an alien world at this point. It's hard to dominate something you don't know anything about.
Luckily, young Storm just happens to be here to get caught shoplifting by Apocalypse, and she just happens to know where to take him when he saves her ass.
Nothing about this scene is lucky. You skip the part of this scene showing Apocalypse watching Storm demonstrate her power when she conjured a sandstorm.
Great fighter. She's my hero. I want to be like her.
But You can't. She has transforming powers. You have the ability to control the weather. So you aren't and never can be like her.
This is a blatant effort to misunderstand what Storm was trying to say. There's no fucking way you thought that was what Storm meant with that line. Cut the shit.
Learning from touching a TV in 1983? Sure, you can learn everything you ever need to know from that contraption. They're called learning electrons.
Earlier, you send the film for explaining one of En Sabanur's abilities.
Think he lived all that time?
Yes and no. They believe he had the ability to transfer his consciousness from body to body.
Deus exposition.
Now you're sending the film for showing you that he is a technopath. How do you expect movies to give you information? Just laser that shit into your brain a la Riddler boxes?
We're sure to see lots of stuff about war here, because every supernatural being who learns about the world through speed reading or fifth elementing or how Lucy did it in that movie whose name I've forgotten runs across copious amounts of war and almost zero porn.
Yeah, because war is probably the most significant and omnipresent bad feature of human culture. Nudity and sex, especially in ancient Africa, wouldn't be something that's exactly taboo for him.
I thought I'd see you here again.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, it took $6 million and the promise of filming in Europe to convince me.
Everything wrong with X-Men Apocalypse, ladies and gentlemen. An actor took money and incentives to be in it.
I want to set you free.
This is what Aaron Rodgers said to get her to go out with him.
Everything wrong with X-Men Apocalypse, ladies and gentlemen. An actor's real-life personal relationship.
I know the kind of mutants you're looking for, and I know where to find them.
How does the god Apocalypse need some non-god human mutant's help in finding the mutants he needs? Like, he totally doesn't, right?
The way you're emphasizing the word God insinuates that you believe Apocalypse is an actual god, and he's not. He's a mutant. Ancient people saw his abilities and worshipped him like a god. Hell, if they'd seen Storm back then, she'd be worshipped as a god as well, considering, she controls nature. Also, the film is showing you that he totally does need her help. He's not all-knowing, and Psylocke here has some information that he doesn't.
He's got metal wings that throw knives. I guess his body constantly regenerates the amount of metal he needs to fly and fight at the same time? Who knows? It's cool, damn it. It is cool, right?
The answer to your question is, yeah. Apocalypse augmented his mutant ability to regenerate his lost feathers. I mean, is that seriously that hard to believe in a franchise where there are people that can literally control the weather, create psionic blades, and throw playing cards that explode?
This is where your power was born.
No. His power was born when he was because it's genetic. You mean to say this is where your power was awakened by Kevin Bacon, I think.
You're literally arguing semantics. When Apocalypse says born, he's saying awakened, genius.
What's up?
Just checking on you.
I'm good, playing Pac-Man.
You are clearly playing Ms. Pac-Man. Not the same at all.
The only major difference between Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man is that it's slightly harder because things are faster, which obviously means nothing to Peter.
I'm just saying, Empire is still the best. It's the most complex, the most sophisticated.
Here's a popular Star Wars opinion being presented as something fans were saying on their way out of having seen Return of the Jedi, which is simply not the case. Empire rose to prominence years after the original trilogy completed, and this already try-hard movie is now overdosing on try-hard.
Try-hard? Congratulations, Pot. You have completely misunderstood Kettle. This is actually a reference to this film being the third in a trilogy, and how even though the third film might be decent, the second was the best, just like Days of Future Past and Empire Strikes Back. Also, I take issue with the idea that there weren't people talking about Empire as the best film in the franchise on the way out of Return of the Jedi. Here's an article from 1983 specifically stating that Return of the Jedi isn't as good as the other two, and I quote, "Unfortunately, it conveys the sense that the machinery has already started to wear down and the inventiveness to wear thin."
Also, this is 1983, where very few franchises actually had a planned continuous story over a whole trilogy. You can't make a definitive statement like this as if it were common in 1983 to have trilogies like this.
Really? Superman 3, Return of the Jedi, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Jaws 3? With the exception of Halloween 3, all of those movies came out in 1983 alone, and Halloween 3 came out in 1982.
I mean to turn it into a real campus, university, not just for mutants, either for humans too.
Who gives a f*** about humans?
Charles Xavier?
Yep, Charles has somehow been too afraid or too lazy to use Cerebro to look for his lost friend Eric all these years since Days of Future Past. That's actually supposed to be believable.
Probably has something to do with the fact that they've fallen out really hard. Also, Magneto's helmet is supposed to block telepathy.
I'm connected to all of their minds. Where are you, Eric?
Are you connected to all mutant minds or not? These two statements, uttered within 10 seconds of each other, mind you, are entirely incongruous.
Wrong. This is essentially like looking at 1,000 puzzle pieces at one time. You can see all the pieces, but do you automatically know the piece you need without expressly looking for it?
Someone's taken over Cerebro.
At this point, you're basically dealing with God. The very idea that this guy could be defeated is a fantasy.
Unless you're Kratos. or the Romans.
No more weapons! No more systems!
This dialogue is starting to sound more and more like Radiohead lyrics as the movie goes along.
Sinning Radiohead lyrics.
I'm glad he's here because Quicksilver is the best thing about the last couple of movies, but damn, this is amazing timing.
Dude, this is a movie. Literally anything that happens in a movie ever is amazing timing.
The problem for me is, I know Quicksilver is like super fast. Like our minds can't even comprehend how fast he is. But even if he's faster than the speed of light, which he's not...
Hold on. I'm gonna let you finish, but how would you know that Quicksilver isn't faster than the speed of light? Wouldn't that be you referencing the books? I thought they didn't fucking matter.
Even if he's faster than the speed of light, which he's not, he's somehow able to save everybody in the mansion, going inside then outside, inside then outside. An explosion like this wouldn't take terribly long to blow the whole mansion, but we're supposed to believe he's quicker than this somehow, and I ain't buying it!
Okay, but you qualified this by saying, even if he's faster than the speed of light. The speed of light is 670 million miles per hour. Even the greatest detonation velocity is barely a fraction of that speed. If Quicksilver were moving anywhere near the speed of light, saving everyone in this mansion would be trivial at best.
Movie blows up the X-Men mansion like it's the Starship Enterprise or something.
Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the film cliche.
Pretty sure I got everybody.
Alex was closest to the blast.
Which I guess means he's dead then? How did Quicksilver f*** up that badly?
Hank just said
Alex was closest to the blast,
insinuating that Havoc may have been engulfed in flames at the moment Quicksilver decided to act.
I know Jean doesn't have much control over her powers, but maybe she might try to infect the minds of all these soldiers and make them just go away?
Jeremy answers his own question.
Jean doesn't have much control over her powers?
I can't. Once they close the doors, there's some kind of electrical field.
Some kind of electrical field prevents genetic mutants from using their powers, because electricity and genetics are so inextricably linked and such.
Nightcrawler's abilities are tied to the electromagnetic field of the Earth. Any interference with that causes him not to be able to teleport.
These characters are all sad about Havoc dying, and I don't blame them. It's just that, have we really ever gotten to know that dude over 3 movies? He's basically done nothing, right?
I would understand if you were just talking about Nightcrawler and Jean Grey, but Havoc is Scott's fucking brother. You just asked, why is the film showing Scott sad? Because we, the audience, haven't seen his brother do much.
Olivia Munn poses for her action figure here, because she's given nothing else to do.
It always amuses me how much virtue signaling you do while simultaneously picking on women for being useless. I mean, is Archangel not posing here being useless as well?
Wait a fucking second. The last time we saw Jean, Scott, and Nightcrawler, they were in the back of the helicopter. You know, the one where they have the special force field that keeps them from using their powers. So how in the f*** did they get out of that helicopter?
You're not paying attention. The helicopter only blocked Nightcrawler's abilities, not Cyclops or Jean Grey's. Once they opened the cage to take out Mystique and the others, they could just walk out undetected due to Jean's telepathy.
This would-be badass Wolverine fight scene is rendered moot by this movie's pussyfooting PG-13 rating. Thank you, pussyfooters.
The decision to make this film PG-13 was before Deadpool proved that R-rated superhero films could also do big numbers. So you really should blame the general audience for not going to see more R-rated movies.
An hour and 38 minutes into the movie, and I'm still wondering why the hell Apocalypse needs any of these assholes to complete his plan. He looks like he's doing just fine on his own.
The ironic bit is that you're clueless an hour and 38 minutes in when the answer to your question was in the first 5 minutes of the film. Apocalypse is trying to move his consciousness into another body, and he needs his horsemen to protect him during that process. That plan got interrupted the first time, and it sent him 56 centuries into the future.
Destruction on a scale so large, it will take 7 whole days for LexCorp to fix it.
Jeremy makes a pop culture reference.
He's going to transfer his consciousness into the professor. If he does that, he'll have the power to control every mind in the world.
Pretty much confirms that Apocalypse could have done this first before making Charles do it, which led to him sneaking a message to Jean, but that's an inconvenient detail these filmmakers hope you don't notice.
What are you talking about here? Making Charles do what? And how does what Jean just said confirm that Apocalypse could have just done this? Whatever the hell you're trying to say here is extremely out of context. Seriously, it's almost as if you're just having a brain meltdown attempting to come up with sins to pad the runtime on this 21-minute video.
This girl is playing young Storm, and I mostly feel sorry for her since I don't think she's spoken more than 1 or 2 lines of dialogue this entire movie. Good news, you got the role of Storm in the new X-Men movie. Bad news, you have practically no lines.
Here's a Control F for Storm in the X-Men Apocalypse script, which proves what you're saying is bullshit. Even if she only had a few lines. What does that matter? Does every character in a film need the same amount of lines as other characters? If you do the same search for Archangel, he has fewer lines than she does.
Yay, what's her name again?
Psylocke, my personal favorite X-Man, an Omega-level mutant whose powers consist of telekinesis, force fields, telekinetic weapons, flight, telepathy, master martial artist, psionic blast.
Split them up.
Olivia Munn gets the Ray Park one-line treatment, proving Bryan Singer is at least not sexist.
Well, this didn't age well.
Let's talk about Apocalypse's plan, which was to wait thousands of years to be resurrected, then recruit a team of 4 horsemen helpers that each still have issues, then attack the entire world so that the X-Men will respond, then kidnap Charles and hook him up to this convenient dual-slab Egyptian ceremony thing, and you know what? I'm done right here. This shit's out of control. In the name of a few pre-planned effect shots, you assholes have allowed this film's plot to veer into the territory of the insane.
I mean, this is par for the course for X-Men stories. Wait until you get your hands on Messiah Complex, because that shit was bonkers.
Be part of something much bigger than yourself.
Movie pads its already ridiculous runtime by showing flashbacks to previous movies. Jesus movie. End.
Irony.
Aw, ain't that cute? She thought the guy who was buried under a rock for several millennia and has the power of God was gonna die from this.
Considering this is Mystique, she has no way of knowing this wouldn't work, genius.
This is Charles physically beating a man in some sort of dream state. I don't know what the punches really represent, but I guess this is causing some sort of pain? I don't know, a fight between mutants with extraordinary powers devolves into a punching match, basically.
Considering Charles's mutant ability is telepathy, even a 5-year-old could tell you that this is supposed to represent a mental assault.
This seems kind of early for Jean Grey to suddenly burst into Phoenix, right? She was just learning her powers. Now she can full-on blow up just like that?
The Phoenix Force isn't one of her mutant abilities. It's a parasitic cosmic being that attaches itself to a host, which means it literally has zero to do with her not being able to master her abilities.
Mystique told me he is your father.
She did? What an asshole.
What the? I'm fucking done. Bye-bye.